wanting to talk a little bit about, the concept of from automation to augmentation. In other words, how do we enhance what we have as humans? How do we take that tech and put ourselves into a position where we can do more, almost thinking about, things like Iron Man, that movie, and how the tech enhanced what this person does. So the tech still needed his abilities, etc., and his decision making, but it actually augmented his abilities. So bringing that back to our industry is, automation is largely seen as a threat by many, and I think it is if we don't sort of anticipate and put our strategies in place as a company as part of this transformation journey. HR has to play a huge role in helping this shift in perspective. But our augmenting human intelligence, enhancing speed, accuracy, insight, and strategic decision making across the value chains possible, and how do we work towards that? So for that, I got two guys, Ravi Govender and Mark Robinson, and keeping the Excel idea in mind, these are much younger people than me, and so they will bring a whole new perspective. Ravi Govender is Group Digital and Technology Officer at Momentum, over 15 years of distinguished service in the financial and consulting sectors. Ravi brings a wealth of experience and innovative insights into this role of his at Momentum. Before joining, he held prominent positions in digital channel head and strategy within the banking industry, following also a successful tenure in strategy and innovation consulting. His mandate is to ensure that all the group's digital initiatives and innovations are perfectly aligned with market demands and opportunities, while ensuring seamless operational coherence across all businesses within the group. Very good description of a Group Digital and Technology Officer. And then we've got Mark Robinson, Head of Information Technology at iTOO. Mark is a pragmatic, lifelong learner who appreciates combining theory and practical experience to ensure technology acquisition and delivery alignment with business needs in the, obviously, insurance vertical. He currently leads the technology function at iTOO Special Risks, where the business is trying to shake legacy and ensure technology is a strategic enabler to support the business continued growth trajectory and digital transformation. So two guys very well positioned to see how do we augment the human knowledge, strengths, skills, etc., that we've got in our businesses through this technology and automation process. So Ravi, if you don't mind, we can start with you with some of your perspectives.
Thank you very much, Tony. It's a pleasure to join. And thanks for the intro. No, I think it was a provocative topic. I have to admit, I kind of sat back and said, okay, this is going to require at least some thought in terms of this, because I think we talk about from automation to augmentation. I don't necessarily think that this is sort of a spectrum of moving from steam to electricity, as an example. I think this is more of a adding on capability. So very much more in the realm of the hybrid car, where the battery works in conjunction with the internal combustion engine. Automation, I think, is still an important part of how we optimize our organizations to be able to better serve clients, advisors, our colleagues, so human beings. And my view of a digital organization is very much a case of how do we ensure that any human being who engages with us can engage with us effectively, efficiently, and empathetically through the means of very good software. But that then implies that the advisors that we serve are able to leverage those capabilities to be able to better serve their clients. And automation is a big part of that because it speeds things up. It makes sure that we can get things done faster. It makes sure that we can get things done accurately. So automation has been important. It still is important, and actually it's being enhanced significantly by the effective use of both traditional and generative AI. Augmentation, however, we're starting to recognize is becoming a far bigger part of this. And that is because at the end of the day, in order to meet the future head on, we've got to ensure that it can't be about, I mean, I don't think there's any doubt that this is not about replacing the role of human beings. What I think it really is ensuring that human beings are doing the work of human beings and not the work of robots. Let the robots do the work of robots. And where a human being plays an important role, let's ensure that that human being is actually augmented with a kind of technology and technology support that enables our engagements with both, from a momentum perspective, our engagements with our advisors, and then from our advisors' perspective, their engagements with clients, to actually be the cornerstone of a trusting relationship. It ensures that there's effective engagement, accurate and precise engagement, timeous information flow based on genuine insights. So the use of data, the use of technology to be able to gather that in the moment, to be able to give the best possible advice to a client, and to ensure that it's delivered in such a way that it's easy to take up, easy to serve, easy to deploy, so individuals can get on with the important things in their lives. So we see this very much as a enhancement of our operating models and our business models within the group, and certainly our engagement models. And automation and augmentation, both being part of that journey, just always ensuring that they're always leveraged to enhance the human experience and not to somehow replace humans in the loop.
That's the quest that we have as an industry, and both from a technology perspective, but also from a distribution perspective, being the human in that element. Mark, maybe you want to add to that?
I think very interesting. I mean, I think if you look at lots of the news and the hype around artificial intelligence, a year or two ago, we were probably much more focused on automation, right? And that's where the fear element is crept in. We're replacing people with technology, and technology that can probably fulfill a function that human can. I think that was probably a difficult sell in the market to some degree for enterprise clients and for insurance carriers. And you look at more and more, the tech vendors are now positioning their products as a augmentation, right? They've probably also realized, just like Ravi has mentioned now, we're dealing with humans. Our customers are humans, our staff members are humans. So at the end of the day, it's very difficult to automate everything or all processes. That would probably not serve a kind of greater society. And in a country where unemployment is what it is, that also makes that kind of positioning where this is a replacement for people very difficult to stomach, and probably will impact things like acquisition and adoption. So I think that's just kind of one idea. I see the kind of world has moved more from selling automation to selling augmentation. I agree with Ravi that it's not a either or. I'm going to come to my background and kind of current position and how that applies to kind of at iTOO. But the first thing I wanted to say is that automation is not new, right? Over the decades, there's been several enhancements in technology which have facilitated more and more automation and digitization of processes and work streams. I think it's also important, and kind of a forward for me, is that, the saying goes, it is tempting if the only tool you have is a hammer to treat everything as if it's a nail. And I think that artificial intelligence and generative and traditional, they're not a panacea for all of our kind of digital and automation requirements. They're one tool in the toolbox, And I think technology alignment is kind of even more important now than it has been in the past, just given the amount of hype, investment, adoption that kind of we're seeing in the market. So if I then touch over to kind of iTOO, or kind of more the specialty insurance industry, you know, I always get asked the question, is underwriting an art or a science? I see it as a very good blend, you know, and I think when you talk specialty, you're talking, you know, niche, difficult to insure risks. You're talking about lots of uncertainty. You're talking about a gut decision at the end of the day that a human is making. And in this particular vertical, and it might not be the same for personal and commercial insurance, but you know, the augmentation, I see it's going to be more and more important. It's going to, like Ravi said, it's going to help us serve our customers and agents better. It's going to kind of deliver faster, cheaper, more tailored, more personalized products that, you know, that we probably haven't been able to deliver in the past, just because of things like, you know, probably cognitive limitations on our teams, right? How much can they focus on at any given point in time? How much time can they invest in a specific deal, you know, and in tailoring that solution for the client to make sure that is an exact fit. So I think it's, for me, augmentation is really interesting. I also think that in certain spaces, automation is obviously equally important. And it's going to be a toss-up depending on the situation, the industry, and the context of which technology you deploy and how.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, that's it's an interesting goal that we have, and maybe a question for both of you to maybe provide me with some of your comments. Both companies, you know, Ravi, your company, and Mark, you work through brokers. It's a large part of your distribution channel specifically. And if we look at the broker distribution or advisor distribution, we have the broker as your client, but the end client is also your client, and the end client is also the broker's client. And in your design, in your processes that you put up in this augmentation thinking, you have to keep in mind that it might be a hop to the broker and to the client, but at other times it might be a hop straight to the client, and at other times it might be a hop only between the broker and the client. How do you facilitate that when you look at interaction with your systems, with the way that stuff is being processed, etc.? Let's start, Ravi.
I'll kick off. I just wanted to just latch onto one point that Mark made before I do. You know, the point was so well made, Mark. The more, even in complex tasks, I recall there was a comment by the CEO of Goldman Sachs probably a few months ago, where he sort of said it was taking, say, 6 lawyers 6 weeks to be able to pull together the information for an IPO. Now it takes a week to do that. Those 6 lawyers are still involved, but they're involved in the final 10%, which is the most important part of it. They're not necessarily involved in the first 5 weeks of pulling together the various pieces just so that they could start adding value. And that's where the sweet spot of the combination of automation and augmentation comes in, so that the critical aspect of human ingenuity, human creativity, and judgment can be brought to bear. And to your question, Tony, I think that's so well made. My colleague Johan Leroux often speaks about the golden triangle that we've always got to think about in terms of the relationship that we have as both the brand and our products with both the advisor as well as directly with the client, and engaging with the client, not just even that engagement with the client. We've often got to think about the different modalities in which even a direct engagement with the client could be done with, whether it's on an application, in a chat interface these days, on a website, into a contact center. So you really do have to think about a very complex engagement pattern. And it's the same with the advisor. I think what's important is to understand that you've got to set up your data and your systems to be able to understand the complexity of those various interactions, and then genuinely work through the client and advisor journeys to be able to better understand what are they trying to achieve, what are the pain points, what are the areas that need to be done right in order to really enhance that trust. We sort of say to ourselves that every single one of our products and our brands relies on a trusting relationship, be that with an advisor or with an end client, in fact, both. And the quickest way to harm that trusting relationship is when the technology fails in that moment of truth. And so we see technology and the application of technology, whether you're talking about data, traditional automation, channel development, now artificial intelligence, we see it very much as the guarantor of a trusting relationship. That means that there's got to be transparency, and this goes for but then our relationship with our engagements with the advisor, our engagements with the client, what we facilitate between the two. There's got to be transparency. There's got to be no doubt of fairness in decision making, and we've got to enable empathy. And that empathy, whilst it is not 100% only in the realm of human-to-human interactions, we've got to make sure that we are delivering digital capabilities for the advisors to be able to enable them to have a more empathetic engagement with the client. And that is through providing them, as Mark said, with in-time data, insights, capabilities, so that they can genuinely solve the client's needs with a minimum of frustration on either side of that interaction.
Makes a lot of sense, Mark.
I think very
Your
well
thoughts?
put. I sometimes wish I didn't work in the insurance vertical that was intermediated, right? I wake up some mornings and I think, oh, my job and my life would be far simpler if I worked in, let's say, retail, right? And I think that that's the complexity, like Ravi mentioned, this golden triangle. It makes software implementation much harder, or technology deployment much harder than other industries. And I think only when you work in the vertical do you understand the complexity that comes in from that golden triangle. I think I agree with everything Ravi said. The one thing I think that I would, or two things I would add is, one, I see it as a partnership. You know, I think that in order to do technology well, or in order to make artificial intelligence work with this double hop, you know, you're often reliant on the intermediary for good quality data. So there's a partnership there. If the broker or the intermediary cannot see the value in the data, and the data doesn't feed through to the kind of carrier or the license holder in this instance, it's very difficult to do automation. It's very difficult to provide a kind of artificial intelligence solutions for their clients. And I think Ravi mentioned it, like, I think our biggest, I mean, sure, both parties are our customers, but fundamentally we exist to empower our partners, our intermediaries and brokers. We need to be able to provide them with tailored products that they can sell on to their clients. And also then importantly at claim stage, when, you know, the risk has unfortunately materialized, we need to be there again to service them in making sure that those claims are kind of paid timeously. But I think that the partnership aspect is really important. And that's something I need to stress, is one can't work without the other. I think we will deploy technology solutions or artificial intelligence solutions that, you know, the chances of success are drastically diminished. And then I think the second part there is kind of just being open for digital business. I think in the last while, there's a massive amount of focus on something called MCP, which is Model Context Protocol. And that's also with the understanding that some of our partners or end customers may start using artificial intelligence and digital tools of their own. You know, as we're on a digital transformation journey, so are our partners, so are the kind of policyholders at the bottom of the kind of transaction. And being open for digital business so that you can interact with those technology tools that those clients deploy, whether they are agentic or whether they are some other form of artificial intelligence or other technology that's been deployed. I think that's going to become more and more important. And I think in the last conversation, there was a little bit of a touch on what can the industry do. I think the one thing I see in all of this is that there needs to be some form of industry standardization. For years, we've struggled with kind of agreed data models, let's say, so that you can actually facilitate and make digital transacting easier between all the different parties in the value chain. To date, we still don't really have a kind of an accepted data model, especially for short term. If you look at it, there's models by IBM, Accord. Vendors will have their own. Some of the consultancies will have their own data models. And that's also something that I'd love to see in my lifetime, is that there's some kind of standardization and agreement in the industry of how we transact and work together, basically.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Mark. Spot on.
If I can just add one point to what Mark said, Tony. One of the key drivers in terms of ensuring that I believe that the intermediaries can then ensure that one of the key drivers in ensuring that the intermediaries are able to play their role in that value chain that Mark spoke about has to be, again, it's the trust, but it's also, I know that there's been, and maybe it's because of the initial communications around things like AI, etc., in terms of replacing roles in the value chain, and there may have been, therefore, inappropriate fear-mongering that was coming out of that. But at the end of the day, it is about empowerment, because if we're doing what we do to empower the intermediaries to be able to leverage these capabilities and then provide the data, knowing that it will then be converted into insights and value for them, I think empowered people are less likely to fear change and less likely to resist, and are instead more likely to even drive that forward and work more closely with ourselves as brands to be able to identify how can we then continue to get better. So, the role of the intermediary is so important, but our role in terms of engaging with them and ensuring that they see that they feel the importance that we place in their role and the enablement we want to provide to them, I think is always going to be critical.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, it brings to mind for me, when I look at these three, the three hops here that we talk about, sort of almost a case study example, again, for me, is the Capitec way of managing their branches and their technology, and how what they have done. You spoke about the empowerment and the mind shift, etc., is when a client, and we understand that the market that they operate in is quite a difficult market when it comes to the technology adoption and all of those sort of things. But their approach has been to empower their staff so that they understand that environment very well, where the end client comes from, and what the end client needs, how they need it, etc. And when a client walks into a branch and say, "Oh, I'm struggling with X, Y, and Z," they don't tell him or you do it for him on their system. They actually take the client's system, the mobile, and they show them how to do it. In other words, they go through a continuous process of empowering their clients, helping them to make that mind shift of the process and where they want to take them. And Ravi, as you said, that gives the client the benefit of understanding, why is it important for me to be able to do this? Because, look at what I can get right. I don't even have to come to the branch. I can do it on the bus, So I think it's such an important thing. And that brings me now to my next question to the two of you is, as technology drivers, focusing on that, are you involved in this mind shift that is needed to take place within the business, and to assisting those that will be responsible for that sort of change that takes place amongst staff in terms of how they should be thinking about their role in the technology adoption and in the technology rollouts, etc. There is a mind shift that needs to take place as to how do we do this. I mustn't just learn how to type the keys correctly to get the right answers and solve them. I also need to know, how do I fit into this bigger rollout of this technology? So Ravi, maybe start with you again.
Sure, and I think it's a great example. I think to build on your example from a Capitec perspective, the next stage for us, because we would operate under slightly more, shall we say, complex needs from a client perspective, and therefore, from the advisory perspective, I think one of the things that's important to be able to bring about that kind of a relationship is to ensure that organizations such as ours are co-creating these capabilities with active insights and active inputs from the advisory community, both tied and independent, that we work with. Because it's important to understand the perspectives, understand the needs, understand the challenges, understand where the opportunities might be, given the fact that they are the ones who are engaging with clients on a day-to-day basis. So co-creation is another important step in ensuring that we are delivering capabilities that are not simply okay, we've flung it over the fence with a how-to guide, just click here, click here, click here, there's the outcome, and you're done. It's got to be an understanding of how to do it. And lastly, most of what we're going to be doing is not going to be in the strictly single transactional space. It's actually engaging, we kind of say as a group, it's building and protecting financial dreams of clients. That's a very big picture approach to how to think about it. When you think about financial dreams, could go across life, health, savings, investments, over significantly long time periods and significantly changing risk profiles. So ensuring that we are giving the advisors holistic information, holistic capabilities, easy to use and easy to discern and pass capabilities is also going to be important, because at the end of the day, you don't want to be looking at a massive control panel of various things and trying to figure out what does this mean. You want to make it as simple as possible for the advisor, who understands how it was done, but does not then therefore need to do it themselves in that moment, to be able to get to the insights needed and then guide them in terms of, now, how do you put this across to the client based on the specific needs of that client? And that's how you then get to far more personalized outcomes, both for the advisor as well as for the client. So I think co-creation and making sure that we're thinking holistically around what does the advisor and client experience need to look like, what is the information and capabilities needed to bring that about, and being in constant communication and constant monitoring. I mean, it's such a wonderful example that if you speak to the CEO of Capitec, he can tell you at any one time what the waiting time in the branches are and what the time on each screen on their Global One system is. Now, that is the kind of insight that enables them to constantly be looking at continuous improvement. And I think that from an industry perspective, that's an area that there's a significant opportunity for us to be delivering that kind of digital experience for our advisors and constantly enabling them to give us feedback and co-create with us how that can improve.
Yeah, absolutely. Mark, your thoughts?
Two things. I think that some of it is already let's say getting the technology into people's hands. That's happening without us, right? I think that artificial intelligence has moved so quickly, and everyone has probably tried out a Mid-Journey or a ChatGPT in their personal capacity, that it's actually sometimes about managing expectation, from a corporate and an enterprise perspective of, why can't I just use ChatGPT, or why can't I use Adobe's AI engine with the PDFs? It's going to summarize my PDF for me. So I think some part of the acclimatization of artificial intelligence, both staff, customers, and just the general public, that is happening at a speed we've never seen before. You look at the adoption of ChatGPT and how quickly that happened. I think most of us in the technology industry probably are trying to play catch up from those events. And if you look at even trying to keep up with the news around artificial intelligence, that could probably take, my day 3 times over every day. if you have to try and keep up with all the vendors, all their changes, all the changes in models, all the new models that are coming out, all the regulation that's being developed in countries like the EU. So I think that some part of that is already happening, and the acclimatization is happening. I think that then internally, when you're talking about skills relevance, right? I think that's an interesting one for me. So one is like, you know, are graduates leaving universities equipped to kind of work in an environment that is kind of going to be more and more AI heavy? That's a good question. Can they then still apply common sense, right? Because I think a lot of the stuff also is explainability. Like if you're using a tool, but you cannot explain what the tool does, or you don't have insight into how the tool has come out to the outcome, that's a very frustrating experience, both for you probably as the employee performing that service, but also for your customer. When your customer asks you, how did you get to the value of my motor claim? And you actually can't give them an answer, right? They probably like are completely distrusting of you. And it goes to Ravi's trust and relationship point.
Sustainability is key.
Yeah, they're gone, right? And I think that, you know, then you're looking at like the current workforce and kind of getting that workforce AI ready, AI skilled. Everyone almost needs an individual path. And, you know, there has to be some fear mongering. Some jobs are going to disappear or change. You know, you're going to have to become more comfortable in the uncomfortable. You're going to have to try and spend some time upskilling yourself on your own journey in order to understand the tools and play and add value in that whole kind of changed world. That's something that I'm not kind of involved with directly. But obviously, I think I'm on my own journey, as Ravi is also, right? You're also constantly trying to remain relevant in a world that is changing at a speed that it's never changed at before.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. I think from you know, Cover's perspective, our mission always has been we share knowledge, and when you want to share knowledge, it's like, you know, the rules of conversation. When you want to share knowledge, the onus is on you to make sure that the knowledge is received, and that the knowledge is received in such a way that it can be actioned and that it actually means something to the person on the other side, which is quite it's a big challenge. And I think this is where, as an industry, and this goes for the insurers or underwriters, but also for the intermediaries, the brokers, the advisors, etc., is, as you said, Mark, to look at your role in this as a cog in this big machine, and to see where am I responsible for translating this action that is taking place to whoever is receiving it. In other words, for the broker that has a system that the client is maybe having access to and using in some way, for the broker to understand at which point in that system would he need to be able to act in, or be able to advise or step in to ensure that the trust remains and it's not broken by a challenge that a client has in the system. And again, that sort of requires us to upskill ourselves and to assist with that mind shift that needs to take place in our clients, our end clients, the last step in our process. And that's I think the great advantage or opportunity that brokers and intermediaries at this stage have, is that somebody has to fulfill that role. The client can't just be left in the dark with, as Ravi said, or was it you, Mark, that said, yeah, it was you that said, how did you get to this value for my claim? You know, that question is most probably going to go to the broker to say, hey, but what's happening here? And how do you deal with that? It's not just a technology issue at this stage. It's become a different issue. And if you don't, at the right time, step in with the right information, you're going to lose that client, and the trust cycle or circle is going to be broken. So it's a fascinating concept. And I think it leaves me maybe to come to a last question here for you guys. And I know, technology used to be a backroom function. I know from my days when I was in product development 2 decades ago, everything would happen, and then we would go to the technology guys and say, hey guys, we need to do this now. Obviously those days are long gone. It doesn't work like that. So from a strategic perspective, at what point or where in the company strategic hierarchy do you fit the augmentation side of this into your digitalization process? Is there a certain time in which it happens? How do you make sure that as the technology guys, you are in the loop from the right time and the right point? Mark, maybe we can start with you.
I think one of the things is that, Tony, is always relationships, right? And that's internal relationships. I think I found it very difficult when you have a technology push, a technology function that is trying to implement and deploy solutions that are maybe at the forefront or bleeding edge of what's possible, likely going to fail without the support of actually the people that are going to be using the technology. And kind of going up the hierarchy, right? You will probably find it incredibly difficult to just roll out kind of new technology without their support and buy-in. And I think that's probably why a lot of technology projects fail. I think that also more and more you're going to find the business taking accountability for the technology decisions, right? So especially something like artificial intelligence, the problems are probably going to surface that they want to use the technology to help them solve. It's then about having the kind of engineering or the kind of partners that can help you deliver on that ask or that problem. So I think that, and again,
Mark, I think we're losing you there a little bit.
Okay.
I'm not sure if it's just on my side.
I'm back. Can you hear me, Ravi? Cool. All right. Tony, what did you miss there? Out of curiosity, where did I cut? Maybe we've lost Tony.
I think we might have lost Tony.
Okay.
Yeah, because I was going to say, I thought I did pick up everything you said. So maybe, Tony, I think that might have just been your network.
Okay, perfect. But I'm back in, I see. Yeah,
great.
Thank you.
So, I mean, Tony, basically just saying, I think that it's going to be more and more driven by business. I also think that artificial intelligence, there's a little bit of a wait and see at the moment, right? There's lots of experimentation happening. We're waiting for the big penny to drop. I think it's already starting to drop in where the use cases, where it's going to be most effective. I think when we started thinking and talking about this 2 or 3 years ago, everyone was focused on like fraud prevention, some other use cases, but I think it's gone well beyond that. The kind of the capability is advanced to such a degree. It's now just about extracting an ROI from its deployment. Yeah. So I think that a lot of experiments are happening across business, across tools, across technology teams. So it's already infusing into the culture. And I think as it becomes more mainstream in terms of people's smartphones, their search, their email, they're going to get more comfortable with artificial intelligence solutions. And then they're going to start raising the problems that they want a technology function to help them solve.
Yeah.
Ravi?
I mean, to take that forward, firstly, one of the powerful shifts that has happened is that the days of sort of the technology push where there's innovation in a technology and the technologists are now knocking on the door and trying to get in. I think that polarity has now reversed because as Mark so clearly pointed out earlier, the mainstream adoption of technology in the form of generative AI tools, etc., and just the coverage around it has meant that polarity shift means that now you actually have your business leaders who are far more aware of the potential capabilities and opportunities, and they're actually pulling at certain capabilities. In fact, there are some times where we often have to say, look, it's possible, but we also want to make sure that we are progressing prudently and pragmatically around some of this, because the way you go down the hype cycle often is not through the technology itself not working, but it's actually over investing too early in a cycle in the wrong types of capabilities, and then finding that you're not actually seeing those returns. So there is a need for some level of pragmatism, but I can't disagree with the point that Mark made around the fact that it really is around ensuring that there isn't this gap between front office, middle office, back office, between your commercial leaders and your technical leaders. We've kind of banned the phrase the business, because we actually say, well, if you're not part of the business, why are you in the room? Yes, we may have commercial expertise, we may have technical expertise, but at the end of the day, they've got to be joined hand in glove in service to the organizational purpose and the needs of the clients. So I think that's key. And then to the part of your question, Tony, in terms of where does this fit into strategy, constantly and continuously is the answer. Opportunities are always coming up. I think strategy gives you a very good direction in terms of a North Star, in terms of where you need to get to, or what direction you're moving into. And then it's then around ensuring that technology deployment is not seen as somehow these big bangs, but actually what we're delivering to the organization is democratized capabilities that business leaders can pull upon and start to actually experiment with themselves, identify how it can be used, deployed safely, and then leveraged to either the needs of the client, but also management needs within the organization. So I think also, the power of technology such as this in terms of augmenting management to actually collaborate far more effectively in service of client needs, which means that you're then going to be able to drive better outcomes across product areas and really bring down those silos that in a lot of cases are actually the things that get in the way of best serving the needs of our advisors and clients. So I think it is the area of digital transformation and digital capabilities, whether they be AI or anything else, are now not so much a step on the road of strategy, but must be deeply embedded into the culture, into the mindsets, into the thinking. And technology expertise is almost always in the room, so we can understand exactly what's going on in the front line and how to resolve that. And then to be able to co-create the solutions with our colleagues across the group and with the advisors.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the message came out very clearly. I think Graham Gordon kicked off this morning with one of his slides where he showed that we're changing everything. It's a business as a whole. It's not just a system here or just claims or just this. We're changing the business, and everything is involved in that, and everybody has to play their part.
I like a quote that was given by, I think it was the CEO of IBM, who said, look, maybe 10% of roles might be somehow taken by AI, but I can assure you that 100% of jobs are going to be shifted in terms of how they get done by the use of these technologies. And it's our role to make sure that these roles are enhanced, not just changed, but genuinely enhanced for the benefit of all participants.
Yeah, Mark, you had a comment there?
No, I was just going to say it's that creating meaning, right? We've got to make sure that jobs are still involve some kind of critical thinking, that jobs are still valued, that you can retain your employees because your workplace experience, augmented with these technologies, still make it an exciting and kind of a place for growth. That'll keep you retained in an organization. I think that's also going to be interesting. Where you then deploy technologies that are kind of alienating people, you're going to find that your top tier talent is going to walk out the door really quickly. And then I think the last comment there, Tony, is I think what we're touching on now is culture, right? And I think Ravi actually put it way better than I did in terms of, building this mindset in the business that's more digital than it's ever been. And I think that's always the hardest part. I think technology deployment sometimes are easy. Changing the people and users and getting input and getting people to kind of validate solutions, far harder than actually putting the technology down.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Guys, thank you so much. It's super engaging with you. And Ravi, as you said, I mean, when I set that topic and I started thinking about it, and I thought it's going to be quite an interesting one to tackle. But you guys were superb in unpacking where we are at with it and what role this augmentation plays for us. And yeah, so thank you so much for participating here. It's great to have you guys.
I'm also very grateful for the 350 people that stayed for the graveyard shift, right? I'm pretty sure that they saw session 8 and they were like, whew, 3 to 4.
No, they were waiting for you and Ravi, Mark.
No, thanks very much, everyone. That's fantastic.
No, thank you, thank you. And I think I want to do a little bit of a plug here for Cover. I can't miss that opportunity. Cover has, as I mentioned earlier on, put together a digitization masterclass that we will be rolling out in the near future. And the whole idea of that is to, over maybe a bit longer time, take the concepts that are important into the actual implementation and just assist people in a practical environment with the help of a lot of experts, once again, to navigate that trajectory. And it's especially focused on the broking environment to just assist as to where do you start, how do you look at things to be able to fit your business and yourself and your staff into this process and to not lose your clients through that. And as part of that, the challenge that we've seen coming out time and again, that mind shift that needs to take place, that the way that we have to prepare the market for digitization, etc. Cover has been obviously working with clients in terms of mostly B2B, reaching brokers and that environment with their communications, with their material, with their designs, etc. And over the last while, we started assisting brokers and UMAs as well with how do they engage directly with their clients in the digital environment, assisting them to get their digital engagement right, because that's where you will be helping your client making that mind shift, but keeping the connection with your clients. It's going to be in a digital space. And how do you do that? How do you shape your communications? And how do you shape what you share with the client and how you engage with them, where you engage with them? So I think that's super important. And yeah, if any of you guys want to, in the broking or advisory perspective, want to find out more about that, you're welcome to contact us to see how we assist with those sort of things. Yeah, and then, I mean, maybe just to sort of end off the day, first of all, thank you very, very much to our sponsors, FSP Hub, JMR, Teal, and Profida. Thanks to all the speakers that participated today. It's so amazing how people share information and assist to collaborate to make sure that we're all pulling in the same direction. It was absolutely great. And, you know, in summary, almost, I think that slide of Graham Gordon from the beginning, make sure that you get to have that slide again, because everything, the lines drawn through the day-to-day has been about a business as a whole that has to transform and that is busy digitalizing in a world that is digitalizing. And we need to know how does everything fit in? How do these cogs stimulate each other? And what is it further on? What is the motion that is set into motion there? What is the action? So, yeah, a mindset of holistic thinking is what we need at this stage in a digital environment. So thank you guys for sticking it out and for staying with us all day. Remember your CPD to sign in, sign out, that link so that you can get your CPD. And yeah, we will be putting out a couple of workshops in the future about breaking down this, maybe 1 or 2 of these sessions specifically into longer sessions. But yeah, just look out for that. We will communicate all of those things. So everybody, thank you very much. And yeah, enjoy your evening after this. Thank you.